time for us to go to all of the glamour of the World Cup and soak in some Sydney Opera House goodness. Kathleen McNamee, good morning to you.
Good morning, guys. How are we on?
Oh, wow. The green screen's very impressive today.
Yeah, looks real.
Wow.
Yeah, I was going to say it's kind of bright, so I don't know if you can see it properly. But that is Sydney Opera House. Just above me there.
Oh, nice.
You can kind of see it. And then right over this way, Sydney Harbour. This isn't the side with the bridge. I had to go on this side because the other side was very windy and touristy. But yeah, you actually, while you were talking there, a couple of people walked by as well in Ireland jerseys. I was very tempted to run and grab them and be like, do you want to go on the radio?
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, really nice atmosphere around here today, I have to say. Definitely feels like the World Cup is happening more here than it did in Brisbane. I was walking down here earlier and turned to my right and I was like, these people look very familiar. And it was none other than French captain Wendy Renard, top France goal scorer Eugène Le Sommer, and half of the French squad just wandering around doing touristy things. I did ask them, did they want to have a quick interview, but they very politely said no. So I made do with just the fact that it was very exciting seeing them wandering around. Also saw the North Korean boxing team wandering around. So it seems to be like there's quite a few teams wandering about Sydney today, soaking up the sights before the tournament starts on Thursday.
Is it cold?
No, it's flipping boiling. So we were told that like Sydney was going to be colder than Brisbane. I left Brisbane this morning at about 7:30 and it was pouring rain. It wasn't cold. It was like a mild summer day in Dublin. And I got to Sydney and it's like 25 degrees. I'm not wearing it now, but I have a big like woolen pennies coat and a jumper in my bag because I basically just dumped my stuff and came straight out to see what the vibe was around the city. So yeah, I don't know if you can tell either from my slightly sunburned cheeks. I had to go buy some sun cream because the stuff I put on this morning clearly didn't do the job for the entire day.
Because it was supposed to be winter time down there and it was going to be like, we'll be totally fine in the conditions, but actually it's going to be balmy.
Yeah, put it this way, like if the weather is like this when we're playing, it's going to be like a hot summer's day in Dublin. Like I think it was like 25, 26 degrees today. Now it does apparently get a lot colder in the evenings, like it does turn colder quickly. So I'll see in a couple of hours what it feels like around 8 o'clock, which is what time Ireland will be playing here local time. But yeah, no, definitely there'll be no cold weather training necessary for how nice it is here right now.
And what's the schedule for the team today, do you know?
So today they just had a training session and then they fly to Sydney tomorrow. They actually have, I'm not entirely sure the logic of them not flying out until tomorrow morning because they have quite a hectic schedule. So they had a training session last night, which included some of those pictures that you guys were talking about. I think the ones that were taken at home were the ones of them wearing jerseys from the league, but the pictures that they took last night were of all their kind of home clubs and stuff. Yeah. And it was really nice seeing them all running onto the pitch. They were so excited, like they almost kind of reverted back to their little kids when they were running out onto the pitch and they were all like messing and like jumping on each other's shoulders and stuff. It was like a really nice vibe. So they had that training session last night, another training session today, and a bit of recovery. And they fly tomorrow morning from Brisbane to Sydney, and that flight's about an hour and a half, just under an hour and a half. And then they go straight into match day -1 prep. So the press conference is tomorrow local time around 3:30, and that'll be Vera Pauw out of player. And that's kind of the first press conference that's going to be properly open to all the international media. So it's going to be really interesting to see what questions people are asking. And then they have another training session tomorrow evening at 5 o'clock local time. And then game day is pretty much all to themselves. So yesterday we talked to a couple of the players. We had Courtney Brosnan, Rusha Littlejohn, Heather Payne, and Amber Barrett, and it's kind of chatting to them all about what they'd be doing on Thursday to kind of keep themselves calm. And they all kind of said the same thing, that, you know, just treat it like any other normal day. Go for a coffee in the morning with the group. Some people like to read a book, other people like to go for a walk with someone else. So they'll have most of Thursday to themselves until the actual game prep kicks in.
Presumably, Kathleen, one of the first questions from the international media will be, what's the status of Denise OSullivan's fitness?
Yeah, presumably. I think that'll probably be the first one off the lips of the Irish media. I feel like the international media is going to want to talk to Vera more, just from chatting to a few people around Sydney, because it's the first time that a lot of them will have the opportunity to talk to her about the allegations that she is like completely denied from that Athletic article. So a lot of them seem more interested in that than Denise OSullivan. I think with Denise, it seems from the bit of the training session I saw last night, and like I was chatting to you guys about, she looks in a good place. She looked like she was moving fairly nimbly, and the general consensus seems to be, even if she's not 100% fit, she is going to play. So hopefully she's all right, and that doesn't mean that she's, not fit for Canada or Nigeria later on. But I feel like tomorrow's going to be an interesting press conference. I'm really intrigued to see what the tone of it all is going to be.
It's interesting to hear you talk about the players being giddy. It doesn't appear as if the stories and the athletic stuff around Vera Pauw has had an impact on the team, but obviously it's very difficult to tell from the limited amount of exposure you get to them. You are chatting to them though, like, you do see the interaction, and you can tell if people are actually having a good time in each other's company. And look, this isn't particularly scientific, but how are those vibes coming across?
I think between the players, the vibes seem pretty good. I mean, it's kind of been one thing after another for this team. You had, when we qualified, you had all the fallout from the song, you had the Vera allegations, and we had, the Colombia game on Friday, and that just threw such a spanner in the works again. And all of a sudden we were talking about something else other than, the World Cup and how important the game was. And you can see when you ask the players about those specific things, they're a bit exasperated by it, and they just want to focus on the football and the tournament. And when you talk to them about all the things around that, they're very happy to. I thought it was interesting. A couple of them said, I'm just chatting to them on Monday, that they had a day off on Sunday and how much they didn't realise they needed that. So it was up to the players what they wanted to do. Some players banded together, went to a zoo, saw koalas and kangaroos. Other players went up the Gold Coast and just, lay on a beach and sun themselves. A couple of people like Louise Quinn had the chance to see her sister who lives in Australia, who she hadn't seen in a year. Kenny McCabe went to see some family as well who travelled over. So I thought it was interesting. A lot of players said that they thought that they were coping fine with the situation and the fact that it was so busy and that there was so much happening. They thought they were okay with it, and then once they actually had a little bit of time to themselves, they were like, oh no, we actually needed that going into the hecticness of the next week.
Does Vera seem relaxed herself, Kathleen, or how's her vibe been? I guess the Colombia game threw a spanner in the works as well for her.
I wouldn't say she's relaxed. I mean, she looked like she hadn't really slept when we talked to her on Saturday morning after the Colombia game. Whether that was just the general fallout that was on social media or if it was worry about whether Denise would be okay, it's hard to tell. I do think the last few weeks have really taken a toll on her personally. She's just not... She's very sharp normally, and I don't mean sharp as in rude or anything, but, very on the ball. And I wouldn't say she's off it at the moment, but there definitely is a lethargy there to a certain extent, and a little bit of tiredness with the way she appears and also the way she talks. Which you can understand as well. I mean, a lot of the time we do these media events and say she'll talk to me and then she'll talk to RT, then she'll talk to Sky, and you're answering the same questions over and over and over again. So yeah, I think it seems to me that she's feeling it a little bit more than the squad is, which, if the squad are being sheltered from it as much as possible, that can only be a good thing considering how humongous the game is on Thursday and how ready Australia are. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw some of the back pages that some of the other journalists in Ireland were tweeting out from here in Australia, and, stuff like, we're rough and ready, or we're ready to take on Ireland's physicality, and they seem to be playing us very much as a physical team who, if you get past that, that's all we can offer. So yeah, there's a lot of fighting talk down here at the moment about this game, which has a few Irish heads a little bit worried.
Yeah, also maybe they're like totally underestimating our technical ability, which, wouldn't be the first time that a opponent has fallen into that trap and then find themselves going, oh, you can actually, I didn't know you could do that. So we can
hope. The only thing is they have actually played this team in the last year and a half, 2 years, so they do know what they're going up against, and I don't think mentally they seem to be in a very, very good place at the moment, and I wouldn't be surprised if they come out all guns blazing and really take us to town. But I could be corrected. I mean, I don't want that to be the case, but I just have a feeling that this team are on the up and that they could do something really big in this tournament if they play it right. And I think that opening game is key for them to get the jet fuel to go on a run in the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously thinking about winning this, but there's been loads of hosts who think about winning it and then lose their first game or underperform and then kick into something more akin to their actual form. We have some Roisha Littlejohn chatting to you here. Let's play that now and have a look at this. Oh, who knows?
Game. How's Siobhan? That's what. Yeah, look, we've been waiting for this moment for so long. We've wanted to be at a major tournament and it's finally here. I think for me, you're going, it's actually, how special is it that we are now opening up the World Cup? It's amazing. It's exciting, but at the same time, I don't think we're not really thinking about it. We're still just going, okay. I think that's a good way to be because we're relaxed. We don't want to be too nervous days before the tournament kicks off. So I think the squad's in a nice place. Maybe people might feel different, but I think for me it's going to be when we're on the bus going to the stadium for the game. I'll be like, okay, here we are, right? And obviously it's going to be a packed out stadium, but it's going to be special and it's something to remember for the rest of our lives, I guess.
That's Roisha Littlejohn there. We obviously have been talking to her sister about her having those conversations about what it's actually going to be like on the day when the anthems are playing and the stadium is full, and that was before it had been moved to the 80,000 stadium. What are her chances of starting this game, do you think?
Strong. I would be very, very surprised if she didn't start this game. I don't think if Denise is fit, then I don't think the squad is going to change at all from what we saw the starting squad against France being.
So that's the American base. That's the front three. Yeah. Would you personally make any changes?
Just as I said that, 4 players from the French squad just walked by me and they turned and looked and I said it. And I was like, I swear, I am talking about you, but not just because you just walked by me.
Bring him over there, yeah.
I don't know if my French is good enough to call them back.
So that's the team you expect to play. Is that the team you'd pick?
I think with the players that she has brought, probably, yeah. My only question mark would maybe be over Roisha or Lily Agg, but I also wouldn't be massively aggrieved if it was one or the other. I thought it was interesting watching Lily Agg at the open training session that there was, not the one this week, the one last week. She was properly going for it and clearly trying to show Vera, a couple of us commented on it watching it, clearly trying to show Vera that she does deserve a spot in that starting team. I think that squad is so settled now and has been for so long, and I think it'd be very, very hard to bring someone into it without unsettling things massively. And I don't know, is there the depth there to do it either? A lot of the players that are starting are kind of, you look at like someone like Sinead Farrelly. I don't think she has the legs to go a full 90 minutes would be my concern with someone like her. So having those options off the bench is quite important. If you listen to last night's episode of COYGIG, Karen and Emma were talking about the fact that they hate Megan Connolly playing in that back 5. So if she was to move into midfield, then would you bring in someone like Diane Caldwell? And that's something that a lot of people have posited as well as an option. But I do feel like what's there at the moment is probably the best setup that we can have going into the game, assuming that Denise is fit.
Kathleen, when you say that Sydney has more of a World Cup vibe than Brisbane did, do you mean billboards, sides of buses, just general atmosphere? Is there more fans, or what's the difference, I guess?
Yeah, it's just a lot more obvious. I think the cities are also very different vibes. Brisbane is definitely a lot more chill and almost feels like a big, not a big town is a wrong word because it's obviously a big city, but Sydney has a proper city feel to it. And, nearly everywhere you go in the central areas, there's loads and loads of posters that the World Cup is happening. They have it on the side of their kind of version of the Lewis, the tram that goes through the city that has big pictures of various members of the Matildas on it. In the airport, it was really obvious when you flew in that it was a host city. And then just generally, since I've been walking about, I got in around 11:30 today. I kind of got into town, just kind of went for a wander, and automatically, and maybe it's just the Irish in me as well, you're noticing Irish people, you know. There was a group of girls wearing Galway jerseys, sitting eating ice cream down by the pier. When I was waiting to come on to you guys, you know, a couple of Irish people walked by in Irish jerseys. So you just get a bit more of a sense that the tournament is happening. Whereas in Brisbane, you were talking to a lot of people, whether it's like staff in restaurants or shops or even in like taxi drivers. None of them actually knew what was going on. You'd be getting an Uber out to Meakin Park, which is a good like half an hour outside the city to drive. And the taxi driver would be like, so where are you going? And you'd explain, and they're like, that's happening here, is it? It still feels like in Brisbane there wasn't that much of an acknowledgement, and maybe that would change the last couple of days. A few more teams have flown into town. I think Ireland were the only ones there for the last week. But yeah, no, Sydney has a good vibe about it. Hopefully it continues over the next couple of days.
And in terms of you were talking about the back pages, like obviously there is an Ashes series in the balance. The international rugby team, which I know is not particularly popular even when they're doing really well, got beaten at the weekend, which is a good opportunity for them to kick the team, so that probably ratchets up the amount of coverage they get. What kind of level of coverage is the World Cup getting?
It's getting quite a lot. Like, in fairness, the stuff that I'm seeing, it's all about Australia and then little bits about the Ireland, just because we are that opening game. But if you're flicking through like the news channels, which I have done many a morning the last week because of jet lag, you know, there's at least a segment on it on every news store or any news bulletin, which is kind of good, whether it's updates from training or different events they had that game against Australia or against France, and just before that they managed to get like their jerseys, which were handed out to them by little girls called Matilda from all over the country, which I thought was quite impressive that they managed to gather 23 of those together. And then for the newspapers, especially, I think since the weekend papers probably wasn't so much about it last week, but definitely in the last couple of days, every back page is interviews with various players in the team. If you go on social media as well, like all the branding, all the big brands in Australia, all covered in the Matildas. Even just walking around the shopping district earlier, you know, there's big life-size posters of Sam Kerr or Ellie Carpenter. There's a massive like Adidas football in one of the squares, and you can like get your picture taken beside the football and like a hologram sort of thing of one of the players. So it definitely feels like the hype is building, and that a lot of effort has gone into, you know, making it really visible here, which is class to see. And I'm looking forward to seeing what it's going to be like over the next couple of days. You know, I've already sourced an Irish bar that's doing a screening of the match. It's only about 5 minutes from my hotel, so I intend on going over there and seeing where the true Irish crew are based in Sydney.
Kathleen, good stuff. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
See you.
So Kathleen McNamee on the steps of the Sydney Opera House this morning.